What we found stopped everyone within the company in their tracks. Nearly 8 out of 10 inbound conversations reflected purchase consideration before a sale ever happened. Hey, and welcome back to the Social Media CX podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Sellas, CEO of B Squared Media, author of Conversations That Connect, and your official guide to turning social media from a cost center into a revenue engine. Doesn't that sound nice? This is week 2 of our June Care series. Last week, we talked about C or conversations and why they're the foundation of everything. Why that brands aren't having conversations yet can't build anything on top of it. And how an insurance company, yes, insurance, got over 3% monthly engagement just by showing up differently on social. If you missed that one, go back because it's the foundation of everything we're building this month. But today we're talking about the A, which stands for acquisition. We tag all of those incoming conversations to see how much of it is acquisition, so intent to buy. And I'm going to share a story that generally changed how one of our clients thinks about their entire business, not just their social strategy, but their entire business. So strap in. Several years back, we started working with Brother International. You probably know Brother because of their printers or their sewing machines or their label makers. They are a global technology brand with a massive product catalog and a very active social presence. We came on to manage their social care, and when we do that, we did what we always do, which was we started tagging and coding every inbound conversation. So we're responding to those, yes, and we're closing the loop or closing support tickets, yes, but we also want to categorize what people are saying and why they're saying it to the brand, about the brand, and so on and so forth. And this is where things get interesting because for Brother, like most brands, here's what they assumed going in. Social's for support. It's for those complaints. People come to us on social when something's broken, when they have a question, when they're frustrated. So they assumed that the majority of the conversation would be support. They didn't think that pre-purchase conversations or acquisition would be there. They said, if anything, they thought maybe 5% of their inbound conversation would be acquisition or pre-purchase conversations. But that assumption is usually very wrong. What we found for Brother in those early days was that almost 20% of their inbound conversation was acquisition related or buying intent related. More recently, we ran a 90-day tagging intent study across their inbound social care conversations for one of their divisions, SOS. And what we found stopped everyone within the company in their tracks. Nearly 8 out of 10 inbound conversations reflected purchase consideration before a sale ever happened. Let me say that one more time. 80% of the conversations coming into their social channels around the SOS division were happening before anyone had bought anything and they were about buying something. Almost 40% were tagged as purchasing intent. Almost 25% were price inquiries, directly asking about the price of the product. And almost 16% were features and spec questions. So this is where people asking things like, where can I buy this? People comparing models, people who were ready to spend money and they were landing in the social care queue. So when we brought that data to Brother, they were shocked and excited, hopefully in that order. Because once you see those kinds of numbers, once you understand that your social inbox isn't just a support desk, that it's also an active sales pipeline, you can't unsee it. And Brother didn't just file this away in this report that we built. They're now figuring out how to roll out a social selling strategy across every single one of their departments, starting with, obviously, the sewing products division, where the acquisition signals are the loudest and the results might be the most dramatic. That is what acquisition tagging does. This is the A in care. It doesn't just tell you what's happening in your social channels. It tells you what's possible. It tells you how to get to return on investment for social. So let's talk about what acquisition tagging actually is and how it works inside of the CARE framework so that you can do this too. When we talk about acquisition and care, we're talking about identifying and coding every inbound social conversation that signals pre-purchase intent. So that might include things like purchasing interest, price inquiries, feature and spec questions, setup barriers where someone's trying to figure out if your product will work for them before they buy, or where can I buy messaging, also product comparisons or competitor comparisons. These are not support conversations. They are sales conversation. And the problem that we see is that most brands are treating these things like support tickets. They're responding, but with generic answers. They're closing the loop and moving on. Here's where you can buy it. Here's the link, and then moving on. They're not tagging, they're not tracking, and they're not feeding that data anywhere meaningful, which means they have no idea how much revenue potential is sitting in their social inbox every single day. The acquisition tagging layer of care fixes all of that because it gives you a system for identifying those conversations, coding them consistently, and critically building a data set that you can take upstairs to leadership. Here is the truth about C-suite and social media. They don't care about engagement rates. They care about pipeline and revenue. They care about return on investment, ROI. Acquisition tagging gives you the bridge between those things. I want to come back to that Brother number for a second because I know some of you are sitting there and thinking, okay, but that's Brother International, big brand, big product catalog, lots of inbound volume. That's not us. And here's what I want you to know. We have seen acquisition percentages ranging from 20% all the way up to 60 or 70% on specific product lines across our client base. The brands that are surprised by those numbers are surprised because every single one of them assumed they were sitting at 0 or maybe 5% at the most. Every single one, literally every single client we've ever spoken to has said 0 to 5% would be acquisition type conversations. So this is not a Brother International story. It's an every brand story. The question that I think you should be asking yourself isn't whether acquisition conversations are happening in your social channels, because they probably are. It's whether or not you are paying attention to the conversations that are happening and labeling or tagging them in such a way that helps you see that bigger picture. If this is making you think, I need to understand what's actually happening in our social conversations, that's exactly where the CARE Blueprint comes in. The CARE Blueprint is a course that I built specifically to teach you this system, how to set up your conversation coding, how to tag acquisition signals, how to build the reporting that makes your C-suite sit up straight. You can find it at the link in the show notes. So wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, head on over to the show notes, the transcript, and you'll see a link to that course. And because you are listening to this show, if you use the code SMCX, SMCX as in social media customer experience at checkout, you will get 50% off. That brings the course down from $97 just to $48. $48 to learn this system that is now helping Brother International discover 80% of their social conversations were pre-purchase pipeline. I mean, come on, y'all. Pretty darn good. Next week, we're going to be talking about the R in CARE, which is retention tagging. So if acquisition is the C-suite wake-up call, retention is where the real volume lives. It's also where the most compelling cost math is hiding. Because everyone knows it's cheaper to keep a customer than it is to find a new one. However, very few brands know exactly how much retention is actively already happening in their social channels or what it's actually worth. We're going to talk about that next week, so do not miss out. As always, if this show is helping you think differently about customer experience or social media strategy, please rate and review us wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching right now. It helps us bring on more brilliant voices and keeps our community growing with intention. Until next time, think conversation, not campaign.